Welcome to the Elevate Your Best podcast, where today we are going to be talking about don't take anything personally. My name is Michael Danklas of Elevate Your Best.
And I am Bruno Martins from the Cyber Journey. You say don't take anything personally, Michael. Where does this come from?
So, what we've been talking about up to this point, last week we talked about be impeccable with your word. It's one of the 4 agreements from a book written by Don Miguel Ruiz, where he really talks about how we can find more freedom in our life by making new agreements in our life, ones that'll actually serve us better. And this one about not taking anything personally is one way that we can have more freedom to be the person we want to be by really actually being more resilient to the things that are around us.
Let's just recap a little bit. What are the 4 agreements? Like the first one, which one is?
Right. So the first agreement in the book for the 4 agreements is be impeccable with your word, which for me, I always tack on to that, say what you mean and mean what you say. The second agreement is don't take anything personally, good, bad, or indifferent. Don't take anything personally from someone else because that's their experience, not your own. The third one is don't make assumptions. Don't assume you know the answer for something. Get clarity, ask questions, get more clarity so you can move forward. And the last is always do your best. Show up 100% every time. And then there's no regret or shame or guilt about whether you brought everything you have in that moment. Each of these is intended to be a widespread agreement to, once again, like I said, find more freedom in your life to be who you are.
Interesting. And you spoke as well about agreements that serve us, agreements that don't serve us. For what I understood from the last episode, it's like we have those agreements about our lives, things that we just decided about ourselves, and that we sometimes are not conscious about those decisions, but they defining a lot of our lives, right?
Right. So I guess that's kind of a generality. So I want to ask you a question. Is there some agreement that you've made in your life that doesn't serve you?
Probably. The problem about those agreements that don't serve us is that usually they are unconscious. Like we are not very aware of those. For example, the example that pops out in my mind is actually about a content that I'm writing about the subconscious mind and how we can talk with it. And there is this story that I got from this doctor from the 19th century, which was he started questioning himself about the women that would give childbirth, would go through childbirth, and they would die from childbed fever. It was something that they had very common that time, childbed fever. And what I'm talking in this content is that sometimes we agree on things on our lives, we are not conscious about them, but they actually, exactly what you say, they don't serve us, they are actually harming us, and we are not aware that this thing is in action. And what this doctor finds after many search, many trials, and many frustrations, and unfortunately, a friend of his died for him to discover what was happening because the guy cut his hand while doing an autopsy with an instrument. And this guy died, this other doctor died from the same symptoms of the mothers. So he dawned on him like, oh, it's not just the mothers that are going through labor that die from this disease. It's anyone that in these conditions might be cut or something like that. And then he understood it. They didn't know about germs and things like that. And he imposed on the staff of his staff that the hands should be clean and the instrument should be clean with what coincidentally was a great thing to kill germs. He just wanted to eliminate the smell of the corpses. And the deaths fell dramatically. The problem is that when he went to speak with the other doctors, they got really mad because this discovery implied that the doctors were responsible for this such amount of deaths. So I didn't remember something personally, but this is exactly this type of agreement that we have, something that we believe. And we even, in this case, I think it's interesting because they even gave it a name. Oh, this is childbed fever. Like it's another thing, it's other thing completely different. Like it's a phenomena that happens in the world that doesn't have to do with us. But if we look deeply, there are so many phenomena that afflict us in our lives that are actually agreements. I don't know if that was a good example, Michael, but I think it fits well.
So I would say that, kind of there are some of those general statements that we certainly can take to that extreme of several hundred years ago, we thought the world was flat. We assumed that the world was flat, right? And,
Yeah,
if you challenge that of someone, do they take it personally that you're challenging them? Or is it being based on information and experience? And it's even something that I've learned in some of the other studies that I've done is my feelings, my experience is going to be different than yours because it's from your perspective. And how I feel about something, I cannot take out on someone else because they're going to have a different feeling when they're exposed to that. So it really is a matter of what is a reward for you may be a punishment for me, or the reverse. That's another space where I can't take it personally. Your experience and your value of something is different. As an example, I know quite a few people who are really into cars, and that's something that they really highly value. Not a big deal for me. I'd much rather actually have great hiking shoes on that are protecting my feet than to invest a lot of money in a car. But it doesn't make them wrong. And I'm not going to take it personally that someone is investing in a different part of their life because that's where they find value. So I guess, as we're talking about this subject, I really want to kind of go into, who does this affect? Who is a person who may be impacted by this concept? I know that for a long time I was a yes person, a person who would always respond to what people are asking to me and step up and offer and contribute and volunteer to do everything that was out there, as well as I very rarely would say no to things because I didn't want to upset that other person. I would think that I would be rejected or wouldn't be accepted because I said no for something. And owning that as a character of this is where I'm good and I'm willing to do that. This is outside of my wheelhouse. I'm not able to do that. How do I then will that person actually reject me because I can't be everything for everyone?
I had experience with that in my life when I was a teenager, and even in my young years. I had like some problems of my personality, like insecurity and things like that. And I would think that everything, like absolutely everything, was about me. Like if somebody said something isolated there, I would find a way to fit that comment into me. And I was always think that I am wrong. If people call me like any bad thing, like any emotional poison that people threw on me, I would take that. And the thing that I notice about this is that the more you receive those things, these people that wish to attack you, those people that wish to poison you, those people that feed on this interaction, they will notice that, hey, that person receives, you know, that person accepts, that person buys what I'm selling, so let's sell them. And that would attract a lot of people that would just dump a lot of emotional poison into me, and that would affect me through my whole life.
But here's
So it's much of the person that takes me, like, oh, it's all about me, right?
but here's a beautiful thing is if I buy something and I try to give it to you as a gift and you don't accept it, who's keeping it?
Yeah,
It's going to be
the
me.
owner, the person that bought it.
So, and the other thing too that I want to actually throw out here as well is, and I think that this is an important aspect of this particular agreement. And in some ways, whenever I explain the four agreements to people, I kind of come from it from this place as well, is that it's the positive as well as the negative that we can't take personally. So I could actually have spent 4 hours getting ready for the night and think that I'm actually all of that. My hair's perfect. I'm wearing just the right clothes because I spent so much time getting ready, and someone else has had a bad day and they're going to tell me that I look like crap. And on the flip side of that too is I can just throw whatever's on the floor on my body and walk out the door and someone is going to compliment me and say, you look amazing today. Because that's where they're at. That's where they're coming from. It's their perspective. So it's as much about that being accepted is actually seeking that from others, seeking that acknowledgement, acceptance from others, or seeking that criticism from others is always from their perspective. And that's why we can't take it all personal. It is feedback. It's good information to use. It's data, but not all data, not all feedback is relevant for us. It's good to know the consensus, but I'm not going to live my life by consensus. And that's kind of the challenge of this particular agreement is it's really a discovery and a freedom to be who you are I'm going to keep hitting that one because I think that this one in particular is really about that. Is I don't need outside affirmation that I'm doing something right. I need to know here that I'm doing something right.
But Michael, if the person's not supposed to take the negative personally, and it's not supposed to take the positive personally as well, what is the person supposed to take?
It is information that's telling you whether you are heading in a direction for that other person. So as an example, you and I, we interact and I appreciate your opinion and your feedback. But I also know for my business, for Elevate Your Best, where I'm going, you can certainly give me feedback on whether where it's taken you and your relevant experience. But it's always a matter of understanding what is underneath any kind of feedback you get. What is their perspective, their lens, just like we talked about several weeks ago, that they're coming at this from. And it's not a matter of not being open to it. It's more a matter of it doesn't need to define who I am. It doesn't need to define my worth and my value. That's more a matter of what it's about. It's that if I know that I've given him, we're going to get to this in agreement number 4. If I know I brought my best to something, if I've now added 5 more minutes on the walk that I took this morning than the day before, and somebody else says, you only walked for 15 minutes? But yesterday I did 10 and that was a struggle. And today it's 15 minutes. That's my win, regardless of what somebody else's perspective on. If they've run a marathon, that's their journey. That's their experience. That's through their lens. It really is a matter of being confident in what you're doing because you're doing what needs to be done, that you're taking the steps and being the person that you are by looking inside and seeing who you are, rather than basing the definition of who you are by anyone else's judgments, perspectives, etc.
I like this idea of it's not a matter of not accepting what people want to say about you. Like, it's not a matter of being isolated from the world and untouchable. For what I understand, it's more a matter of being unshakable, being not emotionally taken by someone else's action, someone else's opinion, what they think about you, if they think you are bad, if they think you are good. And this relates very well with something that I believe, that we should take life, we should live life as a spectator. That is a lot of information. We might even make a podcast. I will suggest it to you later about this because I think it's an interesting topic. But if you look for the yogis, for the people that do meditation, for people that work with mind suggestion and even hypnosis, you will realize that they all take you to a state where you are more like observing your life in a place of enjoyment, like it's something joyful that you are observing. And this power of observing makes us look at what people are saying and make an assessment, like, how does this serve me, how does this help me, how does this takes me to a next step towards my goal, my objective, my life vision, the things that I wish to conquer and acquire in life. And I even have an affirmation that I do a lot. Affirmations, if you don't know, if you're not aware of it, they are a powerful tool. We'll probably create a podcast about this as well, some conversation about this. It's a very interesting topic and simple, anyone can use, which is this: I am the rock in the middle of the river. And this relates a lot with what we are talking about, not taking things personally. It's like you are the rock and the water comes and it clashes on you, it flows through you, and you are there, unshakable.
Right. Yeah, it very much is a matter of not being emotionally attached to whether people are going to accept for what you are. They're either going to show up or they're not. It's something I'm even finding in my coaching practice as well, is that I am going to be the right person for the right person. I'm not going to be the right person for everyone. My approach is going to resonate with someone. There's going to resonate with many someones, and they're going to reach out and they're going to be drawn to me. And that's where I can actually bring value to other people, because my perspective is going to be different than Bruno's or Tony Robbins or Jack Canfield. I may have used some of the same tools, but my perspective is going to be a little bit different. It's going to serve someone to get to the next level of their life. And it's kind of interesting that in some ways this is us talking about how I'm coaching, which is feedback for someone. But my approach in my coaching is to ask someone questions and then dig deeper in those questions so the person can come to their own conclusion and decide on where they want to go. It's very different than I'm not a consultant. I'm not a lecturer. I'm not someone who's going to go out and tell somebody how to be or what to do. Instead, I'm going to ask them, what has gotten you there before? What are you willing to try? What are the things that you're willing to step into in order to change that result that you don't like where you're at right now? It's a matter of serving them rather than, it's not my opinion. I'm not grading anybody that I'm coaching. I'm the last person that's going to grade somebody else because that judgment doesn't serve us. It's more a matter of helping someone find the blind spots for where they can overcome those things. And acceptance is a fundamental psychological need that human beings have because we want to be part of the tribe. Because if we weren't part of the tribe, we were out in the snow with all the wild animals and we were going to die. There's enough people on the planet that us finding our tribe is far easier now than it has been in the last several thousand years, just in the past 50. So how do we get to a place where we are aware, where we are confident in who we are and find our tribe of resonant people so that we can actually grow to where we want to go?
And you know what? In the personal development industry, we have a lot of people that are against movies, against series, like don't watch Netflix, stop watching Netflix, and things like that. I'm totally like not on this group. I know that there are a lot of movies and series that are fruitless, but you know what? You get so much lessons from the least expected places. The best movie that I can remember to teach people this idea of how the tribe was important is actually a horror movie called The Witch, which is incredible, like very nice movie. There is a lot of people that they don't understand this movie, they don't like it, but it's because it's not the typical horror movie. What it does is this. He shows you, imagine if the whole history of the witches in Salem, it was true, like the witches were true. There were people that made pacts with the devil and things like that, and it's true. And you get this concept and they make a portrait of what would happen if a family was taken out of the protection of the tribe, of the community. And there is this father of this family, nice family, but this guy is he's an idiot. That's the word. He makes like problems with everybody. He's like trying he creates problems, and they are judging him in the beginning of the movie. And they say, okay, we decided that you have no place here in our community. You are to be cast out and live into the woods. And this guy takes his family proudly and takes them to the woods, and there things happen. Because remember, in this movie, these ideas are real. And I believe that this is a great way. Many people that watch this movie don't get this concept, but this is a great portrait of why we care so much for the tribe, why we care so much for the group. Because if the group casts out, witches are not going to come to catch you, but there are predators out there, there is cold out there. You can't do all the crop for yourself. You can't trade things. They can't trade things. There is a moment where they need things and they don't have how to trade them because there's no community. We are community animals. But what I like, Michael, to point out in this is that today, in the world of today, we actually don't need this fear anymore, which is deep rooted in us. I don't know if you agree with that. Do you agree with that? I think that we don't need this fear anymore.
I think the idea of being afraid that there isn't anyone for us is still really relevant for many people. I think that it doesn't necessarily serve us. We still want to belong to something. We still want to know that we're not alone. And
But I don't say about the psychological level. I know it's important, but is it real? Is it a necessity today? Like, do we need this? Will we die if we are not accepted by the group?
Well, it's interesting that you say that on a physiological level. Yes, we do need this. So there was a story that I had actually read about other primates. I think it was chimpanzees, that there's a pecking order for who actually gets cleaned. And the one who's the least on the pecking order has no one actually take care of them. And the life expectancy of that lowest totem pole person is much shorter than the ones that are further up on that. There is a physiological connection. When you thrive is when you have a community. If you are solo out there by yourself and there is no community that you're guiding, as you said, we are social creatures. So if there isn't something that you belong to, there's a whole bunch of chemical things that happen to your body that shuts you down and you now no longer thrive anymore. You can survive for a period of time, absolutely, but you will never thrive. You won't get to that space where you feel valued and valuable and you start shutting down. It may be triggered by something psychological, but I do believe that there are people who are antisocial.
Mhm.
I get it. And that you can banish somebody. You can put somebody in solitary in jail or in prison. And the reason why that is so effective for changing behavior to put someone in solitary confinement is because they lose that connection to their tribe and to their people. And it
Mhm.
causes people to break down. So is it still worthwhile? Can we remove it? Can we reprogram our brains to it? I don't think so. I think that there's still a physical need for interaction with others.
Mhm. And I might have actually expressed myself poorly, missing information. Because what I want to say is that I understand everything that you said. It's true. It's actually factual. But I discovered this myself. I always felt like I don't fit very much here in Brazil, in the communities. I live in a very poor, scarce environment, and I have this mind of abundance and a visionary. I try to see things the best way that I can, like always talking about the future. And what I found out is that I was afflicted by this, not actually fitting in. And what I found out is that with the tools that we have today, no matter how many groups you go after and they don't accept you, I am connected with people from India, from Czech Republic, from Australia, from United States, like from England, all over the world, Portugal. And I found my tribe using the tools that we have at our disposal. So, what I meant to say is that this is not a fear that we should have anymore, because even if you are not accepted by your groups in your immediate vicinity, you can find your groups through other means, through other tools, through other ways. And of course, you need to take care of yourself. You need some physical attention as well. And I believe that we all have the possibility to do that. What I really want to say is that I understand this fear. It's real. If you that is watching this, have this notice that you are taking action for fear of not being accepted, I understand it, but it's not something that should hold you hostage anymore, because there are ways, there are tools that you can use to find people that are aligned to you, that are aligned with what you believe, that are aligned with what you wish to have, the experiences that you have in life. Because it's so hard, Michael. I believe you understand this. It's so hard when we wish to live in a way, we wish to have some experiences, and our culturescape doesn't accept us. And this ties very much with not taking things personally, because they will take it personally. They will put it personally, like your family, for example. If you're going into a path that they judge, it's wrong, it's not good for you. They do it out of love, right? They do it out of love, but they will take it personally. Your mother, particularly, because for our mothers, we are a part of them. I noticed that recently. My mother sees me as a part of her body, like a piece of her that fell and start growing and just went out into the world to do everything. And she's like, oh my God, it's all wrong. Mothers take it very personally. Does it make sense now? I don't.
It does make sense, and I know that, I kind of went off on a tangent there, and it's the toughest part, especially around not taking anything personally, is the things that are said by the people that we care about the most. Being attached to what their opinion is of us, because we don't want to let our parents down, we don't want to let our children down, we don't want to let our friends down, and that's actually why we're in the spaces. It's not, some random stranger on the street. There are many who need to put on a show all the time, and that's how they actually protect themselves. For others, it really is those tight bonds that they don't want to disappoint them, or they don't want to outshine them too. That's the other component of this too, is not taking it personally. If you are stepping ahead of something, or you're doing something that's outside of their comfort zone, they may take that personally. But is it their comfort zone you want to stay in, or your own? You want to move and grow and move into your safety zone? Or do you want to actually fall back on old habits so you get back into old places? Acceptance, I think, is a little bit, is this space where there are people who are going to accept you for who you are. Now, some of this can come into morals as well, and everyone has their own moral code. There are, to me, some fundamental things that are really important. I personally don't think that killing other people is okay. It's not something I'm going to go out and do. Taking away somebody else's free will, I also don't think is something that people should do. There's time and place for those to be necessary. If someone's going to be attacking my family, I'm going to defend them. So, all of these are moral judgments in many ways, but if we come down to the whole core of this, it really is about knowing your worth, knowing your value, and bringing that consistently as your character every moment that's possible in your day.
And I think that to know this worth, know your value, do this recognition there is a great deal of understanding what is us and what is the other person. Like, where is this sphere where, okay, this is about me. This is actually about me. Because it's either about you or it's not about you. Like that, it can be about you, You can be misbehaving. For example, a person, like you said, might be judging life poorly and deciding that his own gratification is worth taking someone else's life or his own advancement into the world. Like I recently watched, for example, The Serpent from Netflix, which tells the story of Charles Sobrage, which was this guy in Asia. He was a French, half Asian, and he just drugged people, make them feel sick, tourists in Bangkok, all over the Asia, actually. And when those people got sick, he would actually kill those people, get their passport, use their passport to travel, exchange their travel check, things like that. He would kill people to take their things, considered one of the most dangerous persons in the world. And this guy was valuing life poorly. So what happens is that then justice comes into the scene, and we as society, because what I realize in this thinking with myself is that if I and you are together and you do something, some poor decision, I can go after you and say, hey, Michael, when we are just me and you, say, hey, Michael, I like you, love you, bro. But you know what? That behavior, it's not really cool. But when I don't know you, and I see you might, for example, hit somebody else, hit a woman, in a public place, and I don't know you, and I see it. But what I understood was when you don't know the person, what you do is that you call for society, you call for justice. For little that it is not your job to go there and talk to the person. It is your job to go to the authorities and say, hey, this person behaved like this, like that. And society now, because you're not acquaintance to that person, you're not a friend, you don't have the door to talk to the person, so you go there and call society. So sometimes it is about you, but sometimes it's not about you. But what I really wanted to say is that sometimes it is about you, sometimes people will go after you, and it is something that you did, you are wrong, but most of the time it isn't. It is about them. It is about the other person. That person might call you an idiot or something like that. And it's not because you are an idiot. And if you are insecure, if you are needing to be accepted, you might be, oh my God, I'm actually an idiot. Like, what did I do? What can I do? That person's right. And he isn't, because it's not about you, probably most of the time.
And that's where I do my best to be very mindful about the words that I use, of telling someone what you did was idiotic is different than you are an idiot.
Yeah.
There's a different tone to it. There's a different ownership to it. And the action does not mean it's the person. Just like your heart is not all of you, even your pancreas, your toes, your brain, all of that is not the totality of who you are. It is an aspect of who you are, and an action that you've taken is not 100% to the total of who you are either. So, in a lot of what this particular agreement about not taking anything personally, is understanding that how people respond to you, how they react to you, the things that they bring to you may not actually be about what you did and may not be about who you are. it tends to be something that is bringing up an agreement from their past, an experience, a trauma that they've had in their past. I may sound like someone's dad who beat them as a kid. That doesn't make me a bad person because I sound like them. I can't take that personally. Same thing is true of the other aspect of, if I'm actually like their father, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be the best person to help guide them through something. It really is a matter of getting to that understanding of, my reaction to you is based on my stuff as well. And your reaction to me is based on your stuff, your experience, your trauma, your lifelong perspective that you've built up to this point in your life.
Mm-hmm. And there are some people that they are really nasty. There are some people out there that they are just like you mentioned, you go there and you run 10 minutes every day, and then one day you run 15 minutes and you are feeling so up, like, oh, I run 50% more. And then someone comes to you and say, you just run 15 minutes, you just increase like 15 minutes. Couldn't you just increase and the bad thing is that those persons, they might come and say, oh, that is so good, you run 15 minutes, congratulations, but you are running like 10 and you just increase like 5. Couldn't you increase like more 10? It's so little what you do, they come like, they recognize a little bit and then they cut your legs. Because that is a phrase, I don't remember who told this, but it is hurt people hurt people. People that are hurt, people that suffered, people that went through trauma, and all those things, they tend to hurt people because what they know is hurt. Or either they look for more people that will hurt them, it happens. If you in your home dynamics, it's dysfunctional and someone is abusing you, might be psychologically or physically, and you start to recognize that relationship that should be of love, of care, of attention as something that hurts you, you might be looking out into the world for people that will treat you the same way. It is not supposed to be natural, but in this process, it's something that will happen, is that you will start to hurt people as well, or those people, they will start to hurt people as well, because it's what they know, it's the dynamics that they are familiar with. So sometimes if you notice that a person is always psychologically putting you down, it's always making you feel uncomfortable, you get to them and you always go out and it's your energies are drained, like you feel bad, they make you feel bad, they say things that make you feel bad. Understand that hurt people and that you don't need that. Right, Michael? Do you need that?
So I want to kind of pick at the words a little bit here. And this is
Yes.
why this agreement is so important, is no one can make you feel bad. You are feeling bad because of your reaction to what someone said. And
Exactly.
knowing what that underlying premise is. And this is actually kind of the foundation of what the 4 agreements is about, is the idea that if every interaction you have with someone leaves a wound, a gash in your body, especially those hurtful things that you've hurt, and these are open and oozing, and that happens 1,000 times over the first 10 years of your life, those very rarely heal over. In fact, they stay open. So anytime you're interacting with someone, in many ways, you're interacting with someone's wounds more than the person themselves, until they learn to heal those wounds. And when those are open is when that idea of the emotional poison comes out. Is it's easier to react. If you actually have a cut on your hand, every single time you touch it, you repel from it, or you attack what actually made it hurt. That's on the physical scale, what we're talking about on the emotional scale. And that's why this concept of the awareness that you can't take anything personally, because that's their wounds talking and it's rubbing up against your wounds versus who you are underneath that. And really understanding that that's another layer in this that people don't necessarily, they don't have the fuller picture of that. So
Mm-hmm.
how do we then overcome that? And it's by understanding where those wounds are and doing things like making new agreements, because each of those wounds that gets open is in essence a new agreement. I'm an idiot because someone told me that I was an idiot. In fact, me personally, when my mom was sick before she died, she told me that I was an idiot. So I've experienced this, and it's something that doesn't come up very often, but it's one of the reasons why I strive so long to learn more and do more, because I don't want to be an idiot. That's
Mm-hmm.
one of those wounds that I've learned to heal mostly, but every once in a while it comes up. It's for me why I can be condescending, and it's not intentional to put somebody down. It's I'm understanding it from this point, and someone may be here, or someone's here, and we're misfiring, and so that's how it shows up for me. That's how that wound shows up for me, is that I can end up, as I'm trying to connect with someone and communicate with someone, it can come off as being condescending. And that's not where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a place of I want to understand where you're at so I can help you. That's the underneath that wound. That's where I'm going with it. So, but that's why each of these agreements, the base 4 agreements, and Don Miguel Ruiz added a 5th one later, but it's to help heal some of those wounds by making new agreements.
And it's interesting what you told about your mother. Two experiences that I have. First one is that my grandmother, she was actually sick for like 12 years in a bed, and we had to take care of her. And my grandmother was an aggressive woman. She grew up in a very different place in Brazil, like working in, I don't know the words, like the sugarcane mills, something like that. And yeah, she would be a very aggressive woman. And when she started getting sick, she would get very aggressive with my mother and telling things to her. Then she calmed down, but sometimes she would still get like a bit aggressive. And I understand how it can be when the person starts getting a little bit delusional. And my sister as well. My sister would call me a lot of idiot. It might be because of that I bring this example up, because it's fresh. It's like a wound, like just like you say, Michael. And you know what? You asked about the agreements in the beginning, and this is an agreement that I still work on unmaking, because sometimes when I do some mistake, when I do something that I judge wrong, that I acted poorly, the first thing that comes into my mind is that you are an idiot. And then I recognize and I go back into and this is an agreement that she did. It's not me. It's not true, but she decided that I would be an idiot. It would serve her somehow. And you know what? I bought it for many years, and still to this date I still struggle to, when I do something wrong, think you are an idiot, and no, I'm not an idiot. I'm actually this, I'm actually that. And I start to flesh out my positive characteristics, because you may buy those agreements in ways, like I said before, that you don't notice. And you think that they are either true to your nature or they are a natural phenomena in the world, like the childbed fever. And one last thing, Michael, I would like to point in what you said, is that you say that it was emotional, and that those hurts are into layers that we don't actually understand. And what I want to bring to awareness of the watchers, the people, the audience that is watching us, is that I didn't realize that until getting contact with some content from Theo Swan, actually, that we have, as much as we have a physical body, we have an emotional body. There is one thing that is not physical, it's not this, but it is our emotional body. I believe that if you go through the scientific avenue, you find out that those are hormones, reactions that happen in your body, but it is actually, just like you said, another layer. And those things, they are scars into our emotional body. And we need to understand that, recognize it, and learn how do we treat and heal our emotional body. And it's much of a matter of imagination, using like resignification. And we might dive into that later, because there are too many things to go to explain this.
Right. And I very much agree with the idea that there is this layer of our existence. And some people say that we have 5 bodies, 12 bodies. It really depends on your perspective on spirituality.
Really?
And I would think that we can delve into that later for sure. And it's one of those things that I kind of want to come back to the perspective of your wounds in your emotional body. I can empathize to some degree, but I've never been through the same experience as you. And that's why I can't take it personally. The environment that you're in, your culture scape that you're working in is completely different than mine. So how can I judge you for your struggle when it's different than mine? Your perspective is very different. And it really kind of
And
comes.
understanding that is a great leap.
Right. So, and having a conversation and communicating about it can help. But I was never in your shoes. I was not in that situation. Maybe similar, maybe close. But that tone, that exact hertz, that vibration, that frequency, whatever, is never going to be 100% exactly the same. Just like each time that you push the key down on a piano, it's going to make a slightly different tone. It's close every single time, but it's just a little bit different. And I can resonate with that. We can, there's another word where we can be in similar vibration to that. But I need to honor the fact that you've been through your experience and it's yours. And I can ask that you honor my experience and what I've been through. The traumas that I have, I'm not going to compete of who's had a bigger trauma in their life. It doesn't serve you and it doesn't serve me because it's not a competition. I'd much rather us find ways to collaborate, co-elevate, and help each other get better by overcoming some of those things. And not taking anything personally is a step in that direction.
It's interesting what you said about understanding but not competing, because there are some people that you suffered that. What about me? I suffered that, and try to measure things. It's not a matter of that. It is a matter of recognizing that what you've been through, how this affects you, and looking for things that will turn those weaknesses or either cover you against those weaknesses or turn them into strengths. Because okay, if you are needy, if you are this person that needs approval and all, and you don't recognize it, it opens the door for people that are manipulative, that are ill-intended, like, for example, that guy Sobraj, to use that against you. And they will use it because people that have this manipulative abilities, it's like they see things very easily, and they see how to get to you, how to use those hurts, how to touch them in order to make you move. Because people either move towards pleasure or to run from pain. And if someone is touching into something hurt in your emotional body, guess what? You feel pain, you move. So you need to be aware of those things in you, those traumas, those hurts in your emotional body. It's don't deny them, accept them, because when someone comes and tries to touch them to make you move in a direction that they want, you'll be aware of it and you'll be prepared.
And it kind of ties into that concept earlier that we talked about of a gift. Is if I buy something and I deliver it to you and you don't accept it, you don't have to make it part of who you are. You don't need to incorporate that into your emotion, your identity, your sense of self. It's an opportunity and that's a way to get to this place where you don't take anything personally. It is kind of the antidote to that neediness. Insecurity, neediness, doubt, all of those things to me haven't gotten me to the place of where I am. There's a time and place for it. If I'm 3 years old and I need food and I can't get it by myself, yes, I'm going to need help to get there. And at this point now, I want to I'm working at getting in a place where the people around me are all helping us going in the same direction, because we're helping each other head in the same direction because we've decided that's where we want to go. And it kind of really comes back to that idea of what you have done to get you this far is only going to get you this far. And being needy, there's a time and place for that. As a young child, you need that because you can't make food for yourself. You don't have a job, so you can actually buy food or shelter or those 4 major survival things that you need. That are literally your needs: air, shelter, water, and food. Is truly the physical needs. Without those 4, you don't survive. So there's a time and place to be needy for those things. But just like building a raft to get down a river or to cross a river is the right tool at the time. If there's a forest on the other side that's so tightly packed that you can't carry the raft through it, it's time to let the raft go so you can then make your way through the forest. It's not going to get you to the next stage. It's time to put that tool down and learn another tool. So neediness had its place. Getting acceptance had its place. It helps you try on the idea of being in a different identity. Does that resonate with you? Does that feel right? But then as we mature and grow, it's then a matter of learning in contrast in some ways, as well as in alignment with the things that you have out there. Where's you? Where is the Michael? Where is the Bruno in all of that? not just the labels of what you do, what your gender is, what spiritual practices you do, but where is you underneath that?
In this discovery process that you're talking about our needs and everything, there is something, it kind of a little tangent, but I think it's important to mention. There is something that people misunderstand a lot, is that before that, when we are adults, we still get needs. Like, let's say that I want to start a business and I'm a marketing person, I'm a business development person. There are things I don't know how to do, like programming. I don't know how to program, so I have a need. Like, I have this need that I need to go after and find somebody to delegate that thing, to give them to work on that. The problem that I wanted to touch on is that we as adults, sometimes there is a culture of being so self-sufficient that people say, oh, go work on your weaknesses. And we don't work on our weaknesses. This is counterproductive. If I want to start a business and I notice that I need to program, and I go learn programming, okay, but soon I will realize that I'll need another thing. Will I learn that thing as well? I'll never be ready. That idea of start before you're ready, because there are some things that you will realize that you just realize that you need them later. And what if we shouldn't work on our weaknesses? What should we work with? We should work on our strengths. Go after your strengths. Know what you are good. Know what you do best, and going after that also relates with you knowing your value, being sure about yourself. Know your value, be sure about yourself, work on your strengths, and don't have a problem. Don't have an insecurity of recognizing your weaknesses and going after people that will turn those weaknesses, will cover that for you, will fill that space that you need for you. Again, we already talked about this today. Don't be alone in the world. Learn how to work in cooperation with the community, because that's the key. That's one of the major things that we lost culturally into our lives, thanks to technology and all that we live in today.
So I guess this is just me kind of playing with words. When it comes down to the need, the required, the essential, the thing that is necessary for you to survive, those are air, shelter, water, and food. Everything else is something that's going to get you to a result that you're looking to do. But if I were to take away any of those four things, your body will die in extreme circumstances. That's survive. There may be needs to thrive, to build your business, to provide more value, etc. And that's why this thing about taking things personally is off of the scale of need, because I need air, shelter, water, and food.
Everything else is more like we get to do, right? We get to build a business. We get to build a team and things like that. We don't need to.
Absolutely. We have the opportunity to. I'm grateful that it's very different than I need this. I want to work with teams so that I can actually get further along. It's that there's a Ngambe proverb of, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So I like that phrase. I actually, I want to build teams. I want to build community where I can go there, because there are things that I don't know. In fact, I just had that experience this last week. Is I helped somebody down this path, and I was like, hey, can you help me with this? And it's like, this is my area of expertise. This is an area that we can, look into together, but that's not where my skill is. And that's okay, because someone else is going to have that skill. It's going to be a passion of theirs. It's going to be a strength. It's going to be an area that they're more than happy to contribute. What was awesome about that interaction was she didn't take it personally that I said no.
Yeah, it actually adds to your value, right? Because you're recognizing that you don't know how to go there. Oh, so he knows what he knows, and he knows what he doesn't know. So good. It's not a delusional person.
Right. I want, like I said several times, is I want to do all the technical things. Now, if somebody says that they're a doctor and you say, well, I've got the symptom that I'm trying to take care of. It's like, no, I'm a doctorate of engineering. Just because you are a doctor doesn't mean that you're a medical doctor. Same factor that I've run into in IT and technical stuff. Around the computer, there is an area that I know, but there's so much other stuff that I don't,
Exactly.
And I know that that's where I specialize, because that's an area of passion, an area of strength, an area that I'm truly interested in and have skill in because I practiced at it. So here's another thing that I want to throw out here, just because it comes to mind when we're talking about this, especially around taking things personally, is if someone is better at doing something than you are, it's because they've practiced more at doing it than you have. Not because there's this innate gift that they have. There are some really gifted and talented creative people, but even those people started with a spark that they added the fuel, the wood, the fire, the scraps on top of it by practicing it on an everyday basis. And I learned this personally when it came to drawing. I can draft, I can do straight lines, I can actually do boxes. I'm not really an illustrator. And one of my best friends in college practiced drawing every day. I mean, he constantly had a sketchbook around, and I'm not going to be the kind of artist that he is because I haven't practiced as much as he has. And I heard the same thing repeated by John C. Maxwell as well. He was on stage, and that's a young kid come up to him. He's been in the leadership space for 30 years or more. And this kid says, I want to do what you do. I want to sit on stage and actually share my thoughts and have people listen. And his response back was, are you willing to do what I did to do what I do? That's true for everything. Is there's practice to get there. So don't measure your progress against somebody else's. What are you doing in order to get what you want? Because they're going to get what they're going to be practicing what they're doing. And don't, because it's, once again, it's not a matter of being competition. If someone's really good at fixing computers, it's probably because they've broken a lot of computers.
Yeah.
If they're really good at other things in their life, it's because they've practiced it. So be willing, if you want a similar result, is you have to be willing to do the practice. You have to actually put into practice the lessons. You may find some shortcuts, maybe by how somebody's done it, but you still need to find your wisdom in it. Knowledge is fantastic. Wisdom to me is once you've practiced that knowledge and made it your own and incorporated it into your experience and how you show up for it. A bicycle still has 2 pedals and a handlebar, but everyone actually rides it just a little bit differently.
Good. And Michael, let me ask you one last question. Let's suppose that the person started into this journey, it went into its own path and didn't take anything personally, even if he was doing good or doing bad. People were throwing things out at them, and they were just like, you know what, I'm on my path. I'll cultivate my experience and turn it into wisdom. How will this transform their lives? Like, how will not taking things personally and being the rock in the middle of the river, sure of your path, will transform their lives?
I can come at this from personal experience. So I feel that if I'm not taking things personally, I can be more bold in the choices that I take. I can actually be more confident that if my intuition has led me to this space to take this action, I'm more confident in taking that, listening to that voice. That's one way. The internal soft voice that's so hard to hear sometimes because the echo of the mitote, the chattering monkeys in our head that is those agreements of taking things personally that other people have said. It's that confident voice of, you've got this. So when I'm not taking things personally and I'm calling them out of, that's this person saying, not mine. That's from this television show or this advertising. I don't need that. It's actually coming back and it helps me listen to that soft inner voice, that intuition, that connection to source, that, listening to the force of your connection to God, however you want to define that. That's one way that has actually helped me. It's also, when I'm not taking things personally, it's a side benefit in some ways, is that the people who are prone to spout their emotional poison take themselves out of the picture. I don't have to defend as much. I don't need to deflect as much. I don't need to dodge as much because I'm not taking it on anymore. They're going to kind of move on to the next. And hopefully they've had the opportunity to see that this doesn't work for me. And I'm hoping that they change their tactics. And overall, I even had this conversation earlier, is the underlying joy, the underlying fulfillment is a lot easier for me to tap into, because as we talked about, if I'm now exercising 5 minutes more, I feel fulfilled that I'm on my path rather than taking on somebody else's measure and judgment of how far along I've come. Because I'm celebrating my wins. It's that fourth pillar of my coaching practice, is I'm celebrating my wins based on where I've come on my journey. On my side of the mountain, on my path, I'm going to celebrate how far I've come. And that's actually where I think the biggest transformation is then I can bring that joy, that happiness, that fulfillment into the next thing.
Fantastic. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that if you don't take things personally, This will greatly improve your life. It will save a lot of energy because you will not be fighting with other people's opinions about you. And you know what? Successful people don't take anything personally. They are not focused on what people think. They don't care, you know. They just want to focus on what they are doing, the progress that they are making, their journey, and getting out on the other side of the path of the journey. Yeah, I love this conversation today, Michael. Do you have anything else to add?
So now that you brought up energy, I do have to go kind of the next step of that. And that of us talking about these four agreements, in many ways, that is one of the biggest benefits of this whole process is how much energy do you invest in all these agreements that don't serve you? That, as you said, when you do something that you don't like the outcome, you say, I'm an idiot. You know, how much energy are you investing in that? Are you losing in that, if you will, in some cases? That's why being able to take on and practice these four agreements is the freedom to have the energy to do what you want to do and to be who you truly are. Because if you're spending all of your time in that space of breaking your word, about taking everything personally, about making assumptions about what other people are doing, or trying to overdo what you think you're possible on, or hold back on what you can give because you're going to be taken advantage of, all of that is energy that you're putting into a space that's not helping you move your life forward. It's not helping you to get to your destination. It is a distraction. It is a detour from you living the most fulfilled version of your life. And that's why these are a core of what I've been practicing for almost 20 years now, because they're simple, but not necessarily easy.
Mm-hmm. And people might think that we are fantasizing, talking about energy, because when I first started hearing about energy, I wouldn't understand. Like, what do you mean? Like, didn't make much sense. But if you think in a biological level, there is explanation, there is logic. Let's say that you have a hurt, an emotional hurt, a trauma. Let's say that you suffer an accident. And like me, I was in a bike, a car, poof, behind me. I didn't do anything wrong. I was going through my path. Guy was unattentive, probably on his cell phone. Poof, hit me. After that, every time I heard a car braking behind me, emotions would flow into my body. I would be like, "Oh my God, like what's happening? Is going to happen again?" And those emotions, they are, like we say, hormones. Like, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a medical doctor. I don't know about anatomy, but they have like hormones that are released into your body. And to produce those hormones, it requires energy. It requires some sort of transformation in your body. And they do that. And it's such a rapid transformation, such a alarming things. And cortisol, it's so powerful. And it tenses, that makes all your muscle tense, and you need to fight to survive. All this will be consuming your energy. So we speak about energy, and it's all this fantasy and all this imagination necessary to understand it. But if we went through the things, you will see that all those processes, like even when you think about someone that says something to you and releases some negative emotions, all this, even to recover from that, will consume your energies. And sometimes we are not aware of it. Those processes, they take us into like an entire emotional journey, and we get consumed into this emotional journey, into this roller coaster, into healing and recovering from this. And all this energy could be used to focus on a task, move forward with our life vision and in our journey, the journey that we wish to go through.
You're giving me more and more stuff to talk about here, Bruno. I appreciate it. So that idea of you being in that accident that one time. Now, combine that with all the other times that you've had an accident at another time and all the triggers that come up with you each time that you get there. Each of those is going to contribute to your responses and your reactions. So that's why some of these agreements are as important as they are, because it's a matter of reframing those agreements. If you are releasing adrenaline and cortisol and activating your sympathetic nervous system, means that you're on fight or flight. You are ready to run or to fight. And that level of tensing in your body Just if you see somebody who walks around where their shoulders are always up by their ears, they are tense. There is muscles, there is electricity, a measurable energy that's being consumed by holding your shoulders up like this. And then you end up having tense muscles, and that constriction locks down your body, and you are consuming energy while you're doing that, versus moving
Without
into
realizing.
the rest and digest space of dropping your shoulders. That little bit, it may only be, a measure of, 1/10 of the energy I'm going to use for the day. I'm going to use it as a percentage or a fraction instead of an actual like measurement of joules or what have you. But just that release, how much energy will I have by the end of the day to spend time with my partner, to be able to listen to my daughter, to be able to be creative in my business? Because that one little thing of bringing my shoulders down, to not constantly be on hyper aware attention and paranoid that the next time that if I'm in traffic, I may get hit. I mean, if somebody's actually driving in their car and they're always walking around like this, they're never looking at the road in front of them, and more likely to cause an accident because the energy is all around everything else rather than where you're going. So,
and the worst thing is that this becomes the new normal, like the childbed fever. This becomes normal. You're normal. You're always, and it's not supposed to be your normal. Life is supposed to be effortless.
Right. So now that we're into the end of this, I like the fact that we're kind of going to wrap up on that, of getting to a place where these agreements serve to get you to a place where your actions are effortless, where you are able to elevate your best on an everyday basis because you're making agreements that serve you. As I said to somebody a couple of days ago, is I'm sharing this stuff so I can teach myself and remind myself as much as to help others to get there. So I do want to say thank you, Bruno, for having another fantastic conversation with me. This is the Elevate Your Best podcast, where we talked about don't take anything personally. My name is Michael Danklas of Elevate Your Best.
And I'm Bruno Martins from the Cyber Journey. Thank you too, Michael. It's been an amazing conversation. I'm loving having these moments with you where we talk and we share. I too think that when you share something that it's like you are reorganizing all the information. You have this information stored there inside of your mind, and you know it. But the moment that you need to transfer to other person in a way that they understand, you get all that information, you put them into place, and it actually gets another perspective for you. It serves you much better. So I'm very grateful to have this opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you. Make sure that you hit like and subscribe on this video, and hit the bell if you want to actually get more notifications on when we actually are putting out more of these podcasts. We really appreciate you sticking with us to the very end, and we look forward to seeing you next week.